A kid there who knew nothing was still playing and said, "I am a mage here." "That beast spirit take my magic," the girl opposite happily replied. "I am the beast spirit here. I will tear your mage to pieces." Then the boy raised the wooden staff in his hand into a fighting stance. Then the boy struck it hard against the girl's forehead. The girl grimaced in pain. The girl angrily shouted, "Why did you actually hit me?" But the boy showed no remorse and defiantly insisted the beast spirit should naturally be defeated by the mage. So the girl demanded, "Then I also want to be a mage." The selfish boy objected. No, the girl still wanted to contest. How could that be? At that moment, Rabbis approached from behind smiling. The elder greeted kindly. "Aren't the kids of our village full of energy so early?" The two children politely replied, "Elder Rabbis." The naive boy asked, "How can one become a mage?" He answered honestly, "You can't just decide that, child. Mages are the pinnacle of humanity, occupying the highest tier in our society. They are nobles and knights wielding mysterious powers passed down from ancestors. So sadly you children cannot become mages." The boy's father standing behind was somewhat helpless. "What are you telling the children, elder?" "Is that really true?" Rabbis asked in bewilderment. "What is it?" He plainly explained, "I heard a beast spirit has appeared." Rabbis solemnly affirmed, "It's true." This made him uneasy. "What?" Rabbis quickly explained, "Last night Rop said he saw it at the village gate. Its entire body was covered in pitch black shadow. They say it was a leopard the size of a house. But don't worry, the village head has gone to the city to summon a mage. They will surely be able to bring him and the beast spirit will be destroyed." The villagers sighed with relief. That's a relief. Then they instructed the village children, "Listen clearly, kids, for now do not enter the forest." Rabbis picked up a branch to remind them, "Be careful too. Without a mage, nearly no one can kill a beast spirit." The boy's father asked worriedly, "Does everyone in the village know?" He affirmed casually, "Of course." He asked further, "What about him?" Rabbis asked in puzzlement, "Who do you mean?" He mentioned that fellow on Hisaril Hill. On the hill the sheep were lying and resting. He explained to Rabbis, "The shepherd Turan." Turan lay on the ground, staring up at the sky. He lay among the sheep thinking to himself, "I'm bored to death." The scenery was the same day after day. He closed his eyes and complained irritably, "At this rate he'll probably forget how to talk." Suddenly at that moment Turan heard a scolding, "Useless brat." Rabbis leaning on his staff came up and reproached him, "The sun hasn't even set yet, so lazy you're shirking work already." He retorted angrily, "It's already blocking the sun, move aside." This made him furious, "You arrogant brat." He helplessly inquired, "Are you still holding that grudge from before?" Turan acted as if nothing had happened and asked back, "What grudge?" "About after your mother died, were you secretly planning to turn the flock into common property?" The accusation made Rabbis embarrassed and caught. He sat up and affirmed, "Yes, if that's the matter then that's right. I'm narrow-minded, not generous enough to share my mother's inheritance. We're not close enough to ask about each other's health. If you have business here say it quickly and get lost." Rabbis shouted angrily, "That guy." Turan's gaze darkened, questioning what. Rabbis restrained his emotions and warned, "A beast spirit has appeared." Turan casually asked again, "A beast spirit?" Rabbis lightly stroked a sheep's head and reported, "They say it's a leopard the size of a house. Rop discovered it and is going to inform the villagers." Turan remarked indifferently, "That's a big deal." The man worriedly asked, "Aren't you scared? Around here you're the one most likely to be targeted, you know." "I don't know what your guts are made of. Anyway, the village chief has already gone to summon a mage. Be careful. I came personally because I worry about you." Suddenly Turan cut in, "Adults aren't honest at all. Why not just say you're worried about the flock and not me?" Struck to the heart, the man shouted angrily, "Insolent brat." Turan sneered and ordered, "Hey old man, say what you came to say and get out. Your mouth stinks so much it's making my nose almost deaf." So Rabbis had to leave, nursing a belly full of anger. Turan's gaze froze. "Beast spirit. It's the term for beasts that possess mysterious power, magic. If humans have mages, then beasts have beast spirits. A mage coming to this backwater village because of a beast spirit. Finally, I'll get to see a mage in person. But a mage summoned by the village chief probably won't be top tier." He smiled excitedly and said, "Anyway, I want to see it once." Turan wondered inwardly, "Let's see how strong it is." Then suddenly he smelled something. Turan's eyes froze as he realized, this smell is the smell of blood. Dusk was gradually falling. Turan walked slowly. Turan was somewhat puzzled. It was clearly this direction. Suddenly he realized something. Turan's steps also faltered. His gaze looked in one direction without emotion. Turan had seen Rabbis's body on the ground and called nonchalantly, "Rabbis. I told you to be careful, but you went to sell salt first." He thought with some surprise. He didn't expect the smell of blood to come from old Rabbis. Then Turan began to speculate. This wound was not caused by a normal wild animal. It must be the work of a beast spirit. Suddenly at that moment, Turan also looked up in astonishment. He saw a monster beside him. It strode towering toward Turan. He still stood there nonchalantly. The leopard-like monster stepped out and stared at Turan. Down in the village, a boy asked curiously, "Are beast spirits very strong, Dad? Can even adults not defeat them?" He quickly replied, "Very strong, son. An ordinary adult like your father charging in would be reduced to nothing but bones." The boy asked in panic, "Father can't beat it either." "So what will our village do now?" The man reassured softly. "Don't worry, the village chief has gone to summon a mage. The mage will destroy the beast spirit for us." The boy asked anxiously, "The mage won't lose, right? The mage will teach the beast spirit a lesson, won't he?" He nodded affirmatively. "Of course, they are great figures born with magical power. With just a single word, they can kill a beast spirit immediately." Turan glanced at the monster beside him. His lips barely moved. "Die." The leopard-like monster was slammed far away. However, it did not die and only bared its teeth and growled. A strong aura radiated from Turan. He casually wondered to himself, "Not enough, huh?" While Turan was still dazed, the leopard monster charged again. He shouted loudly, ordering it to stop. The leopard monster retreated to a distance again. Turan smiled faintly and muttered, "I knew I couldn't kill it immediately, but it can't even stop." The leopard monster ferociously smashed a nearby boulder to pieces. It ground its teeth in anger and glared at Turan. He no longer stood still and slightly crouched down. Turan exhaled and steeled himself. "If that's the case then." He grabbed a stone in his hand. Turan pulled out a shepherd's rope and shouted, "A shepherd must look like a shepherd." At that moment the leopard monster lunged forward. Turan commanded the stone to harden. Then he used the rope to whip the stone and send it flying far away. Turan's eyes reflected the image of that stone. Then he swung the rope hard, ordering it to accelerate. Turan's foot lightly lifted to gain momentum. A flash of killing intent leapt out. He shouted, "Pierce." A powerful beam of energy shot forward. It steadfastly aimed straight at the leopard monster. The energy beam struck it down directly. Fresh blood spurted everywhere. Turan's energy beam still ripped through the space. Then the leopard monster collapsed with a thud to the ground. It opened its mouth wide and screamed in disbelief. Turan stepped closer. He told himself the target is. Above, the stone was still hovering in midair. Just as he shouted head, it fell and struck the leopard monster's head directly. The heavy stone slammed down and caused a large explosion. Turan stood motionless, staring at the smoke before him. He looked at the defeated leopard monster with utter nonchalance and thought, "First time using this on a beast spirit." Turan quietly asked himself, "Should I dump the body in some valley?" Then he clicked his tongue in annoyance, doing good deeds without leaving a name again for the villagers. Turan sighed tiredly. "It's all because of those villagers." His gaze reflected the image of the monster. "I am actually a mage. I had long been aware of this special gift, since 8 years ago when Turan could control objects. On the day I turned 10, he sat on the ground making everything hover." Turan excitedly called to his mother, "Mom, look, the logs are floating in the air." But his mother said nothing, so Turan called again, "Mom." He kept boasting to her, "I can make fire and even command the wind." The memory of that day remains vivid in my mind. His mother shouted angrily, "Stop that this instant." That was the first and only time she ever flew into such a rage with me. Turan asked, bewildered, "Mother?" Then she gently took the floating log and called softly, "Turan." His mother sat down beside him and suggested, "Come sit down and talk with me a little." She asked gently, "You still want to stay by your mother's side for a long time, right?" Turan sadly nodded yes. Hearing that, his mother instructed, "Then promise me this. Swear that from now on you will absolutely never use this power again." She warned painfully, "And make sure you never reveal this power to anyone." Turan couldn't understand and asked up, "But why, mother?" She calmly replied, "Do you still remember the stories about nobles and knights?" He answered innocently, "I remember." Then Turan began to explain to his mother, "People call those who wield this power mages, whether noble or knight, yet nobles and knights are fundamentally different extremes. Nobles are descendants of the Freyan divine line, gods who descended to save humanity in ancient times, while knights are actually descendants of those nobles, their blood mixed with mortals." She praised him. "That's right, you remember well." Then his mother began to lecture, "That's why people distinguish between nobles and knights, even though both are mages. I'll explain why you must not use this power, Turan." She revealed a shocking truth to him, "Because you inherited this ability from your father, a knight. Behind this village hedge lurk many treacherous nobles. Those nobles look down on knights as little better than slaves." She stared at her son's innocent face and warned, "So you must etch this into your heart. Absolutely no one must know you are a mage." Turan's mother softly asked, "Can you promise your mother that?" Up to now, 8 long years have passed since then. I have always kept that oath I made to my mother. That promise will never be broken. I have no intention of revealing my identity as a mage, nor do I have any intent to leave this mountain and go down to the world. Turan's eyes slowly opened. Suddenly, there was a loud banging on the door from outside. Turan, come out here at once. He slowly moved to open the door. A crowd of people glared at Turan. After hearing them speak, Turan yawned wearily. So what are you implying? He asked calmly, am I the one who killed Rabis? They immediately grabbed his collar, asserting, yes, you are truly shameless. The angry man scolded Turan, you struck old Rabis and then dumped his body outside as food for the monsters, didn't you? After hearing the accusation about himself, he just fell silent. After a moment's silence, Turan spoke, I understand why you deliberately pinned this on me now. They froze at that. What? Turan answered without holding back, the oldest villager died alone instead of brave young men like you who were too cowardly to face the monsters. I can clearly see why you view this as your best escape. He smiled and said, that's certainly an easy way for you to shirk responsibility and pin it all on me. Hearing this, the man flew into rage and swung his fist, shouting Turan. He merely leaned back gently and avoided the blow. Turan thought to himself, magic is truly convenient. As long as I desire something intensely, it will instantly become reality. The price is only mana. Turan whispered, fall down. The man collapsed face first. I didn't have to ignite a single flame. Just a small influence like this, to make things look natural, not too obvious. Just enough so they don't lose their lives. I will use pressure to subdue them. As he thought, Turan executed professional punching moves. A series of wooden sticks were sent flying into the sky. And so, for 8 long years, I successfully hid the fact that I was a mage. After finishing, Turan lightly brushed his hands. He sighed indifferently and reminded them, you should have used some of that strength to arrange old Rabis's funeral instead. Then he turned to the women and asked, did you come here to cause trouble too? The girl hurriedly denied, no, we came to see you, Turan. He fell silent and then suggested, take all these fools down the mountain. Then Turan went inside and took off his shirt. Turan thought to himself, the lower street will certainly be chaotic again. They'll surely use this as an excuse to extort me whenever I go down to trade. Fine, I can teach them another lesson until they agree to a fair price. Thinking that, Turan breathed a sigh of relief. I've given them a lesson they'll remember. They won't dare come back. Suddenly he heard knocking again and irritably exclaimed, are these people crazy? The knocking continued relentlessly outside. Turan came out angrily and shouted, whoever you are, do you really want to be? However, upon seeing the tall man before him, he paused and softly asked, who are you? The man replied awkwardly, I'm truly sorry. I thought I could ask for some work for my journey, but it seems I've come at a bad time. Turan looked up and assessed him, a group of traveling guests. Then he spoke, no, I'm sorry, sir. It's just that a few uninvited troublemakers showed up. Turan wondered to himself, my mother taught me etiquette, but is this polite enough? I've never had a proper conversation with anyone in this remote town, so it feels very strange. Besides, a group of guests carrying weapons appearing in this dull town. Then Turan said, if you intend to find a place to rest. He sighed. Then Turan invited him in. A table laden with food was set out. Turan admitted honestly that his family was not well off, so there might not be any delicacies to offer guests. Kjorn replied between bites that this already felt like a feast. Anyway, you surprised me a bit. Haven't you ever met strangers from afar? Turan calmly confirmed, yes. I was born and raised on this very hill, living as a shepherd ever since, and it's rare for tourists to visit this tiny town. As he drank, his gaze suddenly froze. Turan also lifted his cup and drained it. Suddenly Kjorn exclaimed, how interesting. He turned to ask confusedly, huh? He bowed his head and replied calmly that for someone raised here as a shepherd, you are surprisingly well versed in polite manners. Your parents must have disciplined you strictly. Turan answered honestly that he learned those things from his mother, but she had died a few years ago from a serious illness. Kjorn cheerfully remarked that she raised a son to be proud of, so he was sure she now rests with the gods in the heavenly palace. I want to sincerely thank you once more. Turan replied calmly that he was merely living by what his mother taught him. Then he asked curiously what had brought him to this remote countryside. Kjorn smiled and said he had been tasked to handle a small matter. Turan, surprised, asked a small matter, and the man explained they were looking for someone capable of killing the Black Panther monster. I am a mage. At these words, Turan's face froze. He gently replied that the man must be the mage their village elder mentioned. The man admitted it was him and then asked if he might ask Turan a question. Turan promptly answered, please do. Kjorn inquired that he sensed the presence of a monster in the area, yet saw no trace of any fierce creature nearby. Stranger still, you clearly know about the elder and that monster, yet you are eerily calm, with no intention to flee or hide. If that monster targets humans, its likely target could be you. Aren't you at all afraid? You seem remarkably brave for a shepherd who has never set foot outside this town. Who exactly are you? An answer was uttered, a mage. Back in the past, Turan innocently asked his mother why he couldn't let people know he was a mage. She replied anxiously that it was because of the wicked nobles out there. He asked further, wicked nobles. His mother explained sadly that if nobles were just shepherds like them, then the knights would be nothing more than the dogs those nobles keep. They might treat you with familial affection, but they would sell you or turn you into a sacrifice whenever they felt it necessary. Your mother never wanted her child to live such a life, Turan. You also wanted to stay by your mother's side, right? Turan replied innocently, yes. Then she admonished him to remember that no one must know her son is a mage. Especially other mages, if they catch wind, they will separate mother and child and turn you into their hunting dogs, ready to discard you at any time. And to avoid being exposed as a mage, perhaps you will have to take someone's life with your own hands. Turan's gaze chilled, sharp and unplayful when he mentioned it. After all things had led to this situation, Kjorn struggled to placate him. Why are you silent? He too realized Turan was entirely serious. Kjorn could only force a smile. That solemn look of yours spoils my joke. At this, Turan's face finally relaxed. He breathed out, that was a joke just now. He spoke to excuse himself. Pardon me, I'm not very quick with jokes. Kjorn rose and came closer. No, the fault is mine. I should apologize for making you uncomfortable. Turan laughed to explain that it was his first time hearing a joke about mages, so he was startled. Kjorn was polite too, finding his reaction so amusing that he teased him a bit too far. He extended his hand and remembering, we haven't had a proper introduction. Pleased to meet you. Kjorn smiled and introduced himself. My name is Kjorn, a lone traveler. Turan returned the handshake. How rude of me. I should have introduced myself first. He smiled. My name is Turan, an ordinary shepherd. They sat together to eat and began chatting warmly. Turan mentioned I'm just 18 this year. Kjorn replied I'm 75. Turan was surprised. You still look robust and much younger than your age. Kjorn explained that mages age slowly and live longer than ordinary people. Turan asked curiously what made a man like him choose the life of a wanderer. The question made Kjorn nostalgic. I left after 60 years serving the Arabian family. He recounted, in these later years I simply wanted the freedom to go wherever I pleased without ties. It sounded like a free and romantic ideal. Their conversation went on warmly, leaving Turan feeling comforted by the pleasant exchange. Kjorn smiled throughout. The home's atmosphere brought Turan ease and peace. With such a virtuous man, it was unexpectedly delightful. They talked until the sun peeked over the mountains outside the window. Kjorn suddenly realized it was late. Turan smiled. You're right, I was so absorbed in conversation I didn't notice dawn breaking. Kjorn pushed back his chair. It's time for me to continue my journey. He slid a coin across the table. Take this Arabian coin. It's the purest silver, surely enough to pay for our meal. Turan gladly accepted. I humbly receive your kindness. May your hunt go well. Kjorn teased. Don't say it like we'll never meet again. He glanced back lingeringly before leaving. Perhaps I'll return to pester you for food a few times. The sky brightened over the hills behind the town. The sheep contentedly grazed on the vast grassland. Turan called out loudly, gather together. The sheep, hearing the sound, lifted their heads. They slowly moved toward him. Turan rarely felt so relieved as today. It was the first time he'd met another mage, but more importantly, how long had it been since he'd enjoyed such a relaxed conversation? He happily stroked a lamb's head. The easygoing poise and natural sense of humor always shone through his words. He was warmer than any adult I'd ever met. That very dusk, Kjorn appeared again at Turan's door with a wolf slung over his shoulder. I'm back, Turan admired. He truly is an honorable man. He completely changed his own assumptions. He had once thought knights were soulless machines, always manipulated like tools by arrogant nobles. Turan returned to town with a different worry. Well, how am I supposed to report this to the village elder now? On a forest trail, Kjorn was striding along, nodding that the land of Hisaril now seemed free of monsters. He silently scanned the surroundings. It was true. The fallen, broken trees around reminded Kjorn of something. Traces of a battle remained, but there was no sign of the monster anymore. He stopped before a large tree whose trunk was split by an embedded stone. Could the monster have been slain? Kjorn stared at it in thought. Who would have been capable of hunting it? Or had the elder secretly hired another mage besides me? He exhaled softly but nevertheless felt relieved. As long as the monster was gone and people were safe, that was enough. An instinct made Kjorn's eyes snap open, suddenly on high alert. He quickly spun around. The enormous panther's paw advanced slowly, exuding a rank black stench. Its head had been utterly deformed into a grotesque shape. Yet the force and presence of this panther monster radiated sheer menace. Kjorn froze for a moment. Wait, is this a monster wraith? He recoiled in panic. Who would act so irresponsibly as to do this? The panther monster swiftly raised a paw to strike Kjorn. Its slash made the ground tremble violently, but Kjorn luckily leapt up to avoid it. He regained composure and analyzed the situation. If a monster's corpse isn't absorbed or purified after death, it will mutate into a vengeful wraith like this. A mage who specializes in hunting monsters would never make such a basic mistake. The panther monster continued to rage and attack toward Kjorn. He was perplexed. Clearly whoever slayed this beast must have been a mage, so why did they let it become a wraith? Kjorn wondered, did they truly not know the consequence of leaving that reservoir of mana? No, even an inexperienced recruit should know this basic fact. Otherwise, they couldn't have faced it in the first place. Kjorn's hand condensed into a golden orb of magic. Or did the other have some ulterior motive? Whatever the case, I must destroy it now. The magic formed into a sustained beam of light. Kjorn directed it to strike the panther monster, but the technique seemed unable to inflict any harm. Kjorn was astonished at the monster's power. My magic has no effect. That meant this creature's mana far exceeded my control. He suddenly panicked as all that remained before him was a pool of black water. Where had it gone? Kjorn speculated with difficulty. Was it using magic to counter magic? Where is it? From the shadow behind him, a surge of boiling water erupted. The panther monster had appeared behind Kjorn and roared ferociously. It slashed a line that Kjorn couldn't dodge in time. His arm was grievously wounded, bleeding profusely. This was not an opponent an ordinary knight could stand against. At least a low-ranking noble would be needed to have a chance of victory. Kjorn was knocked backward, seemingly growing exhausted, his breathing heavy. It was unexpected that such a remote mountain village would harbor a high-level wraith like this. Indeed, life is full of surprises. Kjorn gradually conceded to the terrifying power of the panther monster. It seemed my fate only carries me this far. He bowed his head, eyes black with despair. Kjorn ground his teeth, but I will not go down easily. Even if I must die, I will drag you down into darkness with me. His hand gathered immense magic. I'll channel all remaining mana into my palm and strike directly the moment it lunges. The panther monster leapt forward at the same time. Kjorn staked everything on this final blow, his face set with determination. He jumped forward, the panther raised its claws high. At that moment, a gigantic surge of magic flew in from elsewhere. It blasted the panther monster that had intended to attack Kjorn away. Debris rained down, leaving Kjorn stunned. The panther monster was felled, collapsing motionless with a single strike. The attacker spoke, "Are you all right?" Kjorn smiled softly in reply. The shepherd's jest can be quite startling. He turned and saw Tyran approaching calmly. Tyran. Kjorn was surprised. "So you are a mage?" Tyran admitted, "Yes, that's right." Kjorn blurted out, "Why did you hide it from me before?" The prolonged silence left him helpless. "Well, let me ask this instead. Why did you step in to save me now? You could have left without getting involved." Tyran moved his lips because, in the late night at Tyran's house, the wolf lay motionless on the ground. He tilted his head curiously. "Why go to such trouble?" Kjorn asked. "What do you mean?" Tyran explained, "I'm not sure what the elder promised you, but I believe with your skill you could earn much more easily." Kjorn only chuckled. "They truly are pitiable people." Tyran bowed his head in thought. What's pitiable about them? Kjorn reclined comfortably. They live on this frontier, always trembling in fear with no minimal protection. Tyran interjected, "That's not your responsibility or fault, is it?" Kjorn thought otherwise. He stated, "The calling of mages is to inherit the power of the divine. Therefore we should live with pride in protecting the lowly folk." He closed his eyes and sighed. "Perhaps not every mage shares my ideals. Each has their own thoughts and path." The thought made Tyran smile faintly. He replied calmly, "Doesn't everyone have the right to choose their own way of life?" The panther monster regained strength and suddenly attacked the two of them. Kjorn quickly composed himself and warned, "Listen to me. This is not something we can face." He was firm. "It's a creature you cannot defeat unless you are a noble. Quickly inform the elder and help everyone evacuate at once." The panther monster transformed, its grotesque body revealing horrific blue eyes and a slimy, mucus-like form. Kjorn stood to confront it. "I'll stay here to hold it off." He worriedly watched the panther, thinking to himself, "Though I speak boldly, I don't know how much longer I can hold out." Tyran interrupted unexpectedly, "It will be fine." He manipulated a roadside stone. "I believe if that attack had hit its mark, everything would have been fine." Kjorn stared blankly. "What are you muttering?" Tyran's composure made him realize inwardly. Could it be that the previous strike wasn't his full strength? a young knight living in seclusion on the mountain, possessing the ability to hunt a wraith that requires noble power. And indeed, the seasoned knight Kjorn pondered. What he was witnessing now was not simply a chance rural encounter. Countless small stones hovered in the air under Turan's magic. It was not the impulsive act of a young knight trying to flee the nobility. They exploded in concert with Turan, greatly enriching the magic around him, the scene unfolding before them. He smiled. This could very well be the rise of a mage who will change the world. Turan replied to Kjorn, I'm also very curious about my true limits. Kjorn was angered. I absolutely will not allow you to act like that. However remarkable your talent, that entity is still an extremely fearsome opponent. He demanded as the panther monster raised its claws, we must coordinate together. But before it could attack, Turan struck first and sent it flying. Kjorn finally acknowledged the disparity in strength. No, at this moment, if I charged in, I'd only create more trouble. I couldn't even react to that last move. He withdrew the magic in his hands. Right now, I can't be of any help. What needs to be done now? Kjorn wisely stepped aside to observe Turan's surging might, to let Turan's talent blaze forth. Though Turan appeared calm outwardly, he seemed to be struggling. Damn it. He leapt aside to avoid the panther's attack, which remained intact, having no effect whatsoever. Kjorn shouted a warning, you can't finish a wraith with ordinary physical strikes. Turan retreated out of the panther's attack path and asked, then how should I destroy it? With Kjorn's reminder, use fire, Turan raised his hand, his eyes lighting up. Kjorn hesitated, or lightning would also work. A blazing red flame shot forth, scorching the panther's exterior. Turan frowned in confusion. Still no use, Kjorn shouted, not like that. He thought silently to impose a mage's power onto another living creature. Establishing causal rules is the fundamental prerequisite. Don't tell me he's utterly ignorant of the most rudimentary mage knowledge. Kjorn suddenly realized, could it be? He watched Turan's back nimbly slip away from the panther's pursuit. Was he the one who killed the beast and left it to become a wraith? Does that mean Turan has never absorbed mana in his life? Kjorn loudly instructed, don't just conjure a flame, construct it and launch it at it. He was also astonished by this power. Has he reached such strength already? Turan stopped fleeing and channeled magic. A blazing red fire appeared in his hand. Kjorn stood aside watching everything. If you're a mage, creating fire isn't hard, but controlling it requires specialized training. Turan raised the flame and it swelled into a gigantic blaze. Kjorn was stunned. Could he really do that instantly? Turan ran swiftly to the front. He hurled the glowing red orb toward the panther monster. The great flame quickly swallowed it. Its body burned fiercely. The panther monster writhed in pain on the ground. Kjorn shouted, maintain focus. You must continuously channel mana so the fire does not die out. With his patient guidance, Turan gradually succeeded. You must burn every trace of that wraith away. The flickering flames illuminated his concentrated eyes. Before long, the panther monster could no longer struggle. Kjorn breathed a sigh of relief. We have won. He was still stunned. It truly was an absurdly powerful wraith, one that would require at least noble-level strength to withstand. Kjorn's pupils contracted, yet he managed to defeat it. Turan turned to ask Kjorn, is it really over? The contrast shook him to the core. A shepherd from the high mountains could perform such a miracle. Kjorn stepped closer. If you don't want to face another wraith, first absorb mana, Turan asked confusedly. How do I do that? Kjorn calmly instructed, imagine you are drawing something deep into your body. Turan raised his hand. All right. His eyes squeezed shut. A great surge of mana flew out from the panther monster's body. It gathered beneath Turan's hands and then flowed into him. His eyes also reflected the power of the panther monster. At that moment, every pore on Turan could sense the boiling mana coursing through his body. This novelty shocked him. Kjorn smiled and explained, you'll feel a peculiar pleasure of sorts. Even witnessing it firsthand, I find it hard to believe. He asked again, so this really is your first time absorbing mana? Turan clenched his fists, yes. Kjorn watched his retreating figure thoughtfully. After the first awakening, the mana reserve grows over the years. The best way to increase strength is to kill beasts or other mages and take their mana. He calculated, but this is Turan's first mana absorption, yet his command of magic is so refined. This proves his innate potential is on an entirely different level. Kjorn finally realized, meaning this boy is. He spoke Turan. He raised his eyes. What's the matter? Kjorn bowed solemnly. I was very rude to you. May I be so bold as to ask which house you belong to? Turan hesitated. Kjorn, he replied respectfully, yes. Turan looked at his bloodied arm and reminded him to wipe the blood off. After returning, Kjorn had his wounds bandaged. He repeated once more, please forgive my disrespect in forcing a noble such as you to get involved in these matters. I can only sincerely apologize. Turan replied angrily, I've told you many times I'm not noble, I'm just a shepherd, I don't even know who my father is. He frowned, so please don't treat me that way anymore. Kjorn relented, all right, don't look at me with that gaze. He wondered, but why would such a powerful mage choose shepherding? I mean no disrespect, yet the job seems wholly unfit for you. Turan recalled, it was my mother's wish, she told me to live this way until she passed away. Kjorn pondered softly, your mother's wish. Turan recalled his mother's warning, down at the foot of the mountain it's full of cunning nobles. If your identity as a mage is exposed, they'll only use you and discard you without mercy. Kjorn lamented. She truly was a wise woman. Turan was also astonished. I was a bit surprised because I assumed you'd call it overprotective parental care. Kjorn replied, your mother isn't entirely wrong. He bowed his head, his face sorrowful. Mages wield tremendous power, and great power always brings disputes. Just over 20 years ago, a brutal war between great houses erupted. Kjorn's memories were filled with grief. It was the battle between the Arabian clan I once served wholeheartedly and the great house Zahar. Who knows how many lives were lost in that war. He recounted, of the roughly 3,000 knights of Arabian at that time, over 900 perished, nearly a third of them fell. Turan listened intently to Kjorn's story, bitterly. All those close to me were among that fated third. He recalled with pain Brother Denver, who always dreamed of opening a laundry after the smoke cleared. Master Hartman, who sternly taught me because I still had much to learn. And even my wife and beloved son, they were all slaughtered by House Zahar. Only I survived. Kjorn fell silent. That is why your mother was right in one respect. A knight's life can perish senselessly and be more fragile than a commoner's. He warned, however, there is one thing she misjudged, which is your innate talent. Turan asked curiously, my innate talent. Kjorn scratched his head. It's embarrassing to admit this in our current dire state, but I was a fairly capable knight, yet you could easily destroy that aberrant wraith, something even I could not subdue. He assessed, your potential isn't limited to the level of an ordinary knight. At minimum, you've already touched noble rank. Kjorn glanced at Turan, and among those ranks you certainly belong to the upper echelon in terms of aptitude. Turan spoke up, my mother said my father was a knight. Could that have been a lie? Kjorn explained. In rare cases, a child with lesser aptitude than a knight can still be born into a noble family. Or conversely, a child with noble aptitude may be born into a knightly family. Seen that way, I think it's best you leave this hill and venture out to explore the wide world. Turan was surprised. Why is that? Kjorn responded kindly, because humanity desperately needs more talented nobles and knights. We have not yet fully dominated this world. He reflected and recounted tales. Since the primal age, other races shunned by the gods have always lurked for a chance to rise again. Kjorn's voice showed some anger, and in that context the nobles mindlessly throw themselves into wars of plunder. The door opened slightly. That is why this era yearns to find strong nobles with a compassionate heart like you. Before leaving, Kjorn asked, above all, you yourself aren't satisfied with this dull life of shepherding, are you? The question made Turan thoughtful for a moment. His back briefly revealed a sense of loneliness. What can I achieve at the foot of that mountain? Kjorn had no perfect answer to that question. It entirely depends on what you desire. He smiled kindly. Wealth, fame, status, family, or true friendships, whatever it may be, it's extremely hard to find here, isn't it? Kjorn turned his head and reminded him, imagine you could roam the land upholding justice like me, slaying the monsters that threaten the people. He left with a final suggestion, either become an adventurer who sets foot in lands no one has known, or be adopted by a house and walk the path of power struggles. Turan chased Kjorn to the door, and hearing his analysis, I think what you say makes sense. He stood facing Kjorn. Surely that would be far more interesting than shepherding here all year. Turan gave a wry smile. For the first time in my life, I'm genuinely curious about the outside world. Kjorn's encouragement seemed to have an effect, yet I'm also afraid I'm raising unfounded expectations for you. I'll always support whichever path you choose. Suddenly he remembered, right? What exactly is your bloodline ability? I should have asked this from the start. Turan looked puzzled. What's a bloodline ability? Kjorn bowed his head. I'm sorry. I keep forgetting that you don't know much about magic. He explained, a bloodline ability is a trait nobles inherit from their ancestors. The Freyans, possessing a bloodline ability, is the dividing line between nobles and knights. Kjorn conjured a sample magic flame with his hand. Is there any spell you find particularly easy and natural to perform, or an innate ability that works without relying on magic? Turan clenched his fist to guess. Isn't it that I'm very strong? Kjorn replied, Merely having mana is enough to enhance a mage's physical strength. Turan recalled his physique. I have a very keen sense of smell and I'm fairly good at throwing stones. Kjorn inferred from that, if your sense of smell is unusually acute, that could also be considered a bloodline ability. He stroked his chin thoughtfully, and pinpoint accuracy with ranged weapons is one of the marks of the Arabian house. However, that's also a rather common trait. Kjorn asked with interest, go on, tell me more. Turan nodded, all right, after some conversation. Kjorn reached a conclusion. I understand. Turan anxiously asked, what's wrong with you? He couldn't hide his curiosity at Kjorn's serious expression. Why do you suddenly look like that? Kjorn spoke up, I think I've figured it out. Your ability most closely resembles which house? Turan tilted his head. Which house is that, sir? Kjorn had bowed his head the whole time. A famous great house. He recalled that house's brutality and his own past pain, known by the title of trackers or master hunters. The people who suffered losses from the war were the Zahar house. The ones who once confronted the Arabian house directly. Turan was stunned and couldn't believe what he heard. The Zahar house. A cold sweat ran down his face. His eyes alarmed, silently repeating, the great Zahar house. At this thought, Turan swallowed hard and furtively glanced at Kjorn sitting in silence beside him. Is he saying I share bloodline with his enemy? He pressed his lips together, his thoughts in turmoil. What should I say to him? Should I apologize? But these are actions of relatives I've never met, no different from strangers. Suddenly Kjorn called out Turan. He heard and quickly replied, Senior. Before Turan could speak, Kjorn patted his shoulder gently in consolation. Don't be so worried. You didn't take part in that war yourself, yet Turan still felt very uneasy, but Kjorn offered a slightly relieved smile and advised, that's an adult matter. If blood is repaid with blood, the cycle of vengeance will never end. Hearing this, Turan suddenly asked, don't you feel any regret? Kjorn's eyes flickered and he asked back, regret about what? A gentle breeze blew by, carrying his somewhat heavy words about telling me to go down the mountain. Kjorn lowered his eyes slightly, then explained in a grave tone, if you go down the mountain and pursue power, sooner or later you'll join House Zahar. After all, you are very talented. But I trust your character. Those words from Kjorn surprised Turan greatly. What? He looked up and fixed him with a gaze full of trust. I'm referring to the goodness in you, because you saved me, even revealing the identity you've hidden your whole life. Conversely, if someone like you joined House Zahar and rose to high rank, perhaps you could prevent such a brutal war from happening again. The more Turan heard, the more he fell into contemplation without replying. Seeing this, Kjorn stepped past him, and before leaving he offered sincere counsel. Well, there's no need to brood over it too much. After all, you haven't decided whether to join House Zahar yet. No sooner had he finished speaking than Turan answered firmly, my mind is clear now. He smiled faintly, turned to look at Kjorn. I want to try going down the mountain. He heard this and laughed with satisfaction. It's good that you think that way. But then Turan added, not right now. He faced Kjorn and spoke calmly. I will go down the mountain after your wound has fully healed. This moved him deeply. How kind, I'm only slightly scratched. Truly, you are a very good person. After a while, inside the warm wooden house, Kjorn put on a serious face and explained gravely, to use magic you must have mana. That's why mana is often called the universal key. Turan, sitting opposite, repeated curiously, the universal key. Kjorn's stern voice resounded again. It's not entirely an omnipotent force as the name suggests, but to use magic you need a corresponding amount of mana. Turan asked, puzzled, what are the criteria for having mana that matches a spell? He replied calmly, I'll explain that right now. With that, he held up 3 fingers. The difficulty of a spell is largely determined by 3 factors. First, bloodline, second, affinity, and third, the law of causality. Then Kjorn explained each item to Turan. The first, bloodline, is determined by the blood you carry at birth. This applies to most nobles who are not knights. For example, it's very hard for you to heal my wound with magic, right? He responded, that's right. A land immediately sprang to Kjorn's mind, then he continued, but for the Ravista bloodline from the south, that's something they can do even without training. That's power derived from bloodline. Turan lowered his eyes to his palm and asked, what about the second factor, affinity? Kjorn continued, you can think of it as familiarity. It's the concept that a mage can perform actions more easily with things they love or are used to. Turan understood upon hearing this, like the way I form a fireball as if throwing a stone. Seeing this, he stood up satisfied. Exactly, perhaps if you merely conjured a flame you wouldn't achieve that speed or destructive power. And the final factor is the most important, the law of causality. Even I do not fully understand it. Saying this, Kjorn suddenly posed a question. What would happen if you intentionally used mana to kill me directly? Turan answered honestly though puzzled. Perhaps a few sparks would flash from my head and that's it. As he spoke, he reached out and cast magic on the cup on the table. That was precisely the phenomenon caused by the absence of the law of causality making the spell fail. As electric currents danced around, bubbles like boiling water gradually appeared inside the previously empty cup. When there's no appropriate cause for a desired result, and when the goal is excessively difficult to achieve, that's when this law takes effect. After hearing and observing, Turan seemed to have absorbed it. I think I somewhat understand the law of causality now. Saying that, he calmly launched a small flame toward the violently boiling cup of water. If I wanted to kill you, rather than expend mana hopping for death, I'd need to create a cause leading to death. For example, produce and shoot a flame, right? Because creating a fire then propelling it would look more natural than directly burning someone. Kjorn heard this and his eyes lit up as if he had discovered a treasure. Exactly, you could have become a scholar instead of a mage. Turan withdrew his magic, then rubbed his chin and muttered, but I can control ordinary animals at will, so why do magic beasts need such conditions? Kjorn shrugged casually and explained, that's because of their mana levels. After that, the two of them discussed for a long time inside the wooden house. Long after, Turan finally broke into a sweat and murmured admiringly, magic really isn't easy at all. Immediately Kjorn's stern tone resounded. An outstanding mage must not only know how to use mana, but also understand the principles and circumstances behind it. He looked up at him and asked, now that I think about it, does the Zahar bloodline have any special magic? Kjorn paused briefly, then answered frankly, they are very skilled at hiding and tracking. Then he proposed, let's try it once. Turan quickly stood up from his chair, all right. Then he closed his eyes and silently chanted in his mind, I don't want others to see me. I wish no sound or scent would be detected. Immediately, part of his body gradually turned into a wisp of white smoke. Turan, not seeing Kjorn's astonished face, hesitantly asked, is it working? Before him now there was no longer his form, only a faint ripple blending into the air. A few seconds later, Kjorn regained himself and replied, you did it, I can't see you anymore. Saying that, he couldn't help but swallow softly, because at that moment before him it was completely empty. Not even a ripple remained. But in an instant, Turan gradually reappeared in his original position. Kjorn looked at him and spoke, his tone betraying his astonishment. It's been a long time since I've witnessed it, but it truly remains a terrifying ability. In battle, the Arabian House Knights feared that power the most. Turan heard this and fell silent, reflecting, this seems like an absurdly strong and unfair ability. However, Kjorn did not completely agree, but remember, it's not invincible. He did not continue the topic, but quickly turned and left. Now I'll teach you some methods of magic cultivation. This made Turan even more puzzled. Is he teaching too much to a mage of the enemy house? Yet he only spoke gently, you saved my life and even healed me, and didn't I already say? Kjorn lowered his eyes, then placed a hand on his chest, his voice full of conviction, I trust your character. Sometime later, when the village chief heard the news, he twisted his face and shouted, what, you plan to sell the flock and run off? He looked at Turan, who was readying his travel bundle, and angrily reproached, so who will herd the sheep from now on? How can you decide that on your own without consulting us? He heard this and, annoyed, closed his eyes and retorted, you find a new shepherd yourselves. What I do with my property is none of your business. His continued threats made the villagers shrink back in fear. Nevertheless, I hope you will buy the flock at a fair price, otherwise I'll release them all and leave alone. You can go try to catch them, but it'll be quite a chore, one villager said anxiously. Cheat. He was now gritting his teeth and biting his lip, silently calculating, this bastard is the kind who will do what he says. Provoking him will bring no benefit. In the end, the village chief had to compromise and hand Turan a pouch of money. All right, I understand. Leave or stay, do as you please. Then he left the village together with Kjorn. Turan furrowed his brow as if remembering something. I just recalled the people in the village. They still owe you compensation after everything that's happened. Should I go collect it? Kjorn simply smiled lightly as if unconcerned and replied, I don't intend to take it. And you were the one who captured the magic beast, weren't you? He heard that and no longer worried. All right then, so now. Turan paused briefly, looked at the two roads that split ahead and continued. We'll part ways here then. Before leaving, Kjorn glanced at him with regret. I'm sorry for refusing your offer to travel together. I feel more comfortable traveling alone. Turan curled his lips into a relaxed smile and replied, It's nothing, thank you for everything. He closed his eyes and softly bade farewell. Turan, take care. He also smiled brightly and promised, Yes, I hope we can meet again with smiles on our faces. And so the boy stood watching Kjorn's back fade away for a very long time. Only later did he realize why he didn't want the man to be so formal with him. Although he had never lacked his mother's love, deep inside the boy, he still yearned for the image of a father. Someone who could be an ideal model for the brave man the boy would become. Time passed and a scattered trail of footprints stretched across the sand. Everywhere was a desolate, deserted desert. Only the howl of wind slipping through giant rocks could be heard. From a distance, a hooded figure was slowly approaching. That person was none other than Turan. Suddenly, he widened his eyes as if noticing something. Not far from Turan, a group of people were slowly walking toward him. Were they trading caravans moving from village to village? Turan couldn't help feeling secretly pleased. That's great. Quickly, he stepped forward alone to block their path. Go ask them for directions. The leader saw this and demanded, Who are you to dare block our way? Turan immediately explained honestly and asked, I'm traveling alone. May I ask the way to the nearest city? They replied to him that if he followed the road they had come from he would find a city called Mure. Their attitude puzzled him a little. Nevertheless, he calmly replied, I understand. As he spoke, Turan slowly walked past them. Thank you very much for pointing the way. But someone suddenly stepped forward to block him. Wait. He curled his lip wickedly and demanded, You take the information and just leave. Turan was extremely surprised. What? However, he quickly regained his composure. A killing intent slowly flickered in his eyes. So what? The man was unaware and continued to demand, If you receive help, you should at least repay it a little. Before he finished speaking, the surrounding men all drew their swords and surrounded Turan. First, drop that swollen pouch. He glanced around and immediately understood the situation. Highway robbery. The man who had blocked him earlier said arrogantly, And if we were bandits, so what? The leader rested the long sword on his shoulder and curled his lip in contempt. Call it foolishness then. This is abandoned land. It's not strange if someone dies here, right? Next, he thrust the tip of his sword toward Turan's throat and threatened, Drop your pouch and cloak. We're being generous with you now. Killing and stripping you would be messy with blood and take much more effort. But to his surprise, Turan only spoke calmly and composedly. I see. So these highwaymen can even kill without mercy. At the same time, he quickly recalled Kjorn's earlier lesson, especially when he realized the third element, the law of cause and effect, and everything else Kjorn had imparted to him afterwards. Turan curled the corner of his mouth, his gaze treating the bandits like moving sandbags. I'll just use you as targets for practice. Turan revealed a sinister, furtive look beneath his cloak. Guess I'll have to use you as practice dummies. His eyes suddenly froze, puzzled by the laughter. The big boss among them sneered disdainfully. This crazy one talks as if he's a mage. One underling eagerly echoed, That's right, boss. Pale fingers casually flicked out a gust of air. Turan swung his arm wide behind him, creating a gale that scattered them all. The hood was pulled back to reveal his sharp eyes, so instead of merely moving air from the atmosphere, shaping it with the hand and amplifying it consumes far less mana. Turan was still thinking seriously. I didn't know I could make such a powerful gust with so little mana, while the others were beginning to scramble up. What the hell is happening? He calmly opened the lid of a water flask. The drops of water suddenly transformed into sharp points. Under his control, they all aimed in one direction. One of the bandits widened his eyes in blatant fear. The throwing blades pierced into him and shoved him backward. Turan spread his palms ready to receive an attack. This should be a useful spell when there's a lot of water around. Honestly, throwing those stones by hand felt faster and stronger. The bandit leader begged in panic, We didn't know you were a powerful mage. Please have mercy and spare us this time. As he spoke to distract him, the others lunged from behind. We'll give you anything you want, so please be generous and spare our lives. Turan decisively lifted one foot to an appropriate height. As he stomped down, a wave of sand from behind surged to strike all the bandits. The bandit leader watched with ashen face. Impossible. Turan looked down in silence with a terrifying expression. Were they all dead? His voice then slowly rose. Let me ask you one thing. The man cowering there answered politely, Yes, great mage. I will answer anything you wish to ask. Turan stared at him and asked directly, Why did you dare attack me without any plan? If I were just a lone traveler, I could very well be a mage like this. The bandit leader's voice faltered. Because you bowed your head. Just hearing that made his pupils widen. What? He was still hanging his head, sweating. Even when we used rude words, you still bowed and greeted us politely. so we assumed you were merely a weak, ordinary man. Turan's face was cold and expressionless. Thank you very much, that taught me an extremely useful lesson. Hearing that, the bandit leader brightened with hope and looked up. So you will keep your word and spare me, won't you? But what he did not expect was a drop of water beginning to change above his head. Cut to Kjorn speaking calmly. Turan, from now on you will meet many people out there, and there is one thing I must impress upon you carefully. Turan, holding the prepared backpack in his lap, listened intently. Never show any mercy to scum like those highwaymen. They won't hesitate to harm others to profit. The sharp sword lay quietly on the table. The reason I must warn you so sternly is... At that moment he answered very seriously, I think I understand why. Turan now stood before the motionless corpse of the bandit leader. For a life you let go out of weak pity may return to harm 10 innocent people around you. His face calm, he muttered, standing there, I've dawdled here long enough. Turan carefully walked along the sand, following the wheel tracks along the road the merchant-stern bandits had dragged their wagon. The heavy wheel ruts cut clearly through the sand layers. He walked alone along it, leaving a thought as if carved deep into Turan's mind. His lips pressed together, he kept walking forward without looking back. I've killed someone. The terrified expression of the bandit leader suddenly reappeared. He felt guilty, but he truly could not just let them go easily. Kjorn's warning resurfaced vividly in his mind, and he recalled the moment the bandits had tried to ambush from behind. Those who would ruthlessly pillage and kill without hesitation for profit would surely target other villagers again. Whenever they pleased, suddenly his feet stopped at an edge, like the wheel tracks in the desert gradually fatting as grass grew to cover Turan's chaotic heart. He calmed down as he remembered Kjorn's teachings. He paused and looked up at the blue sky, and then he continued, stepping into a completely new world. His eyes kept scanning and he sighed. He saw a place bustling and grand. So this is it, the small town of Murray. On the road, a mother was holding her daughter's hand. Turan, with his backpack, slowly entered, curious. It was the first time in his life he'd seen so many strangers gathered like this. A towering, sturdy building appeared here. Even the architectural lines were markedly different from the small village before. Turan walked through the town, observing quietly without speaking. Now he really felt like he had reached a true city. He now stood before a fruit stall and asked, May I ask a question? The seller replied cheerfully, Oh, hello. The seller directly asked his needs. What would you like to buy? Turan politely raised a hand. Actually, I'm not a customer here to buy. Kjorn's advice returned to his mind again. If you arrive in a city and need a place to rest, look for a nearby inn. Whether village or city, there is usually an inn available. The seller, annoyed, waved him off. If you're not buying fruit, then get out of here and stop clogging up my sight. Turan fell silent, unable to understand the seller's rudeness. Why would he suddenly act like that? Is there some unwritten rule in cities like this that you must buy fruit before you're allowed to ask questions? Turan thought and pointed to a red fruit. How much for this? The seller replied curtly, 2 ducats. Turan calmly counted a few coins in his palm. 2 ducats. The seller still spoke rudely. You really look like an outsider, so you probably don't know what that is. You can pay with other coins too. Turan moved to place a coin in the seller's hand. Where can I find that inn? The seller easily gave detailed directions. Go straight down the road behind the cloak shop, then turn left. You'll definitely see a building with a blue roof. A wooden sign hangs outside with 3 characters. That's the largest inn in the whole town. A pretty girl appeared inside the inn. Welcome to our inn, staff member Lena. As soon as she saw Turan, she gave an unexpected compliment. You're really a handsome guest. He smiled lightly. How much for a night then? Lena, cheerful, quoted the price as she greeted him, 16 ducats. Upon hearing that, he replied, I'll rent it. Turan handed a small pouch of coins toward her. More importantly, I have something I'd like to ask. Lena gently received him. What is it you want to ask? Without beating around the bush, Turan asked directly, Are there any monsters around here with bounties? Lena paused a bit on hearing that. Monsters. His gaze was determined and his expression serious, awaiting an answer. I need to start killing monsters and find a way to absorb lots of mana from them. And he also said you can make money hunting monsters. Turan couldn't wait any longer and asked childishly why she wouldn't answer him. Lena burst out laughing as she tilted her head. Sir. She raised her left hand. Nothing in this world is completely free. In the inn's corner were sealed crates. The town hall is that. Turan sat at a table holding a cup of water. What's that? Lena looked at him surprised. You don't know about the town hall. You're really a country bumpkin. Turan sat silently listening as she explained. The town hall handles many governmental matters. The officials who work there are hired directly by the town's lord. Lena looked at him and said, perhaps it's closed now since the sun has fully set. if you want to seek monster hunting bounties, go to the town hall yourself tomorrow. Lena stood opposite him with a hand on her hip. So you're a monster hunter too? Turan sat up straight and asked calmly, what's a monster hunter? A burly body like that can withstand tremendous energy. There's a rumor that if an ordinary villager hunts a monster, they'll surely become a mage. You want to become a mage quickly too, right? Lena was focused on the conversation, of course. Only fools believe that superstition. Suddenly, a hand was placed on his shoulder from behind. Superstition. Another man with blonde hair appeared behind him. It's true, someone can become a mage by killing monsters. I've seen it with my own eyes. And his name is Midden, a monster hunter. Lena noticed his arrival and called out, Midden, you're still alive? Midden looked nonchalant. I've said it before, I won't die until I become a mage. Turan raised his hand in greeting. Here, Midden withdrew his hand and laughed. Oh, how rude of me. Turan took the opportunity to ask seriously for information. More importantly, could I hear more about what you just said? Midden looked him in the eye and replied, about the matter of becoming a skilled mage by slaying monsters. Lena sat at the table, bored, propping her chin and listening to their conversation. Mages grow stronger when they hunt monsters. By the same principle, if an ordinary person kills a monster, they can become a mage. Midden glanced at the 4 other men behind him. The 4 of us are hunting monsters to become mages. One of them folded his arms confidently. That's right, exactly. Turan looked at them, surprised and serious. So does that mean someone here is already a mage? They immediately replied, no way. In this town there is only 1 mage employed by the Lord and 3 others under him. Midden spoke comfortably and laughed, but didn't you say you'd hunted monsters before? With your equipment like that, it's too cheap. Don't you have any weapon at all? Turan took out an object in front of them. I do have one. Midden recognized it at a glance. A slingshot. Judging by its wear, it's clear you've used it many times. Turan was serious in the tense talk. Yes, I do. It's actually perfect for shooting something the size of an egg very fast. Midden stroked his chin, studying the slingshot. With that weapon, you could easily hunt creatures like rabbits or foxes. Turan blinked and looked at him. Actually, we just said we're looking for another ranged shooter. Are you interested in hunting with our group? His mouth opened slightly. Turan gave a cursory answer then, no, but anyway, and that night as he lay on the bed, there was really no good reason for him to go hunting with them. His face looked hollow and extremely tired. Today was truly a chaotic day. The backpack he carried was placed neatly beside the bed. He still couldn't truly believe he had decisively left that village. Turan held his hand up in the air, playing with a little mana. What will happen from now on? His ear suddenly twitched as it caught a sound. Turan reflexively sat up and looked toward the door. Someone. He remembered walking the barren road with Kjorn. Even here in an inn, I shouldn't let my guard down. Kjorn, walking beside him with his hand in his coat pocket, affirmed, that's right. Kjorn looked at him kindly and smiled. A city doesn't automatically guarantee safety. Hearing that, he replied, I understand. Kjorn continued to warn Turan to be careful, so never lower your vigilance. He obediently agreed. Understood. Turan moved closer to the door, while one hand had already readied mana. The room door gently opened a bit for him to see. His expression did not change. Lena appeared at the door with a smile. Lena, she said softly, are you asleep now? Then she added her purpose. I found the room quite cold, so I thought to warm it for you. Turan was surprised. What? Lena put on a loving expression as she looked at him, fiddling with the bow on her chest. What do you mean? She still stood shyly hesitating at the door. Literally so. Turan stood with legs apart, still not understanding. Literally, what do you mean? Lena began to come on to him and move closer. Just pay a little and I'll do anything you want. Turan stayed sober and firm. What if I don't want anything? She deliberately pressed her seductive body against him teasingly. Don't lie. I can tell just by looking at your face. Unexpectedly, Turan closed his eyes tightly, looking serene like the face of a Buddha. Lena was stunned into silence, only able to stare wide-eyed. Kjorn's very stern, angry face appeared in his mind. No. Turan stood still, looking at his expression, puzzled. Always be careful with inmaids and prostitutes, because most of them carry venereal diseases. He listened seriously to the warning. We may have good resistance, so it's fine, but if you slip and have relations with a woman, you could infect her. Don't let lust make you do something you'll regret. Lena flushed with anger and stomped down the stairs. The city isn't easy after all, from the fruit stall incident earlier to Lena. Turan turned back to lie on the bed on his side. Even small bits of information or stories cost money here. The city really is rather cold. His gaze shifted toward a direction where a sound came from. Hey, I have something to ask. A follower trailing behind Midden asked, why did you want to invite that guy along earlier? He doesn't seem very useful. Turan gave a faint smile but looked very sad. Yeah, that's true. His tone is rude. He looks like bait for a predator. But suddenly his eyes widened at Midden's voice. Looking at him reminded him of his youth. Seeing him hunt with that weapon really worried him. Midden walked on smiling kindly. Well, with me by his side maybe he'll live a little longer. Predator hunter, Midden. The followers had no choice but to accept. Come along then, he's too kind. Because of that, Turan allowed a satisfied smile to appear on his lips. Well then. Turan put his hands behind his head and stared at the ceiling. The city isn't as cold as I thought. The matter proceeded to the next day when sunlight shone on the town hall. A man at the reception desk was flipping through documents. Hello, what's the matter? Turan approached politely and asked, are you the official here? The receptionist replied immediately, do I look like one to you? He didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. I'm here to hunt predators. The receptionist tilted his head in surprise. Predators. Kjorn's gentle words surfaced in his mind again. The world won't be kind to you. At that time you asked, why? He was sitting on a rock stroking the sheep's fleece. Because there's no reason for it to be kind to you either. If you want others to treat you well, it's simple. Tura raised an eyebrow awaiting the next words. Reveal that you're a mage and ordinary people will bow before you. The man at the reception desk handed a piece of paper to Turan. As soon as he took it, he was instructed, do not take this outside, return it after reading. Turan looked at the ugly drawing of a black crow on the paper. Is this a crow monster? The man answered curtly, do you think it's a cat? The receptionist continued flipping other documents. Unlikely though it may be, if you defeat a monster, bring it into the city. If a mage doesn't reclaim the mana, it will turn into a death spirit. He kept warning carefully, if you kill a monster and leave it, city law punishes harshly, even death. Turan studied and listened, understood. The ferocious, malformed monsters replayed in his mind. I know what happens if a monster turns into a death spirit. I must not repeat past mistakes. Turan deliberately asked, don't the knights hunt monsters? The man didn't even look at you and kept writing. Do you think those guys have nothing better to do? He pushed the info paper about the crow across the table. The knight's role is to maintain security in the city. Turan asked to confirm, so I have to hunt monsters outside the city. After receiving the answer, Turan turned and left. That's the work of thugs like you. When the attendant stopped chewing and looked up, he realized, gone already. There's another corpse about to appear outside the city. A milky white eye with no visible pupil in its jet black feathers. A black crow was dying, struck by a deep wound to the chest. Those at the town hall all went pale at the sight. Impossible, that's it. The receptionist and two others stared at the broughton crow. You brought it back this quickly. Turan stood silently beside them as he asked, you caught it alone? He showed no special expression and only replied lightly, yes. Turan immediately asked for what he wanted. Where is the reward? A plump-looking man rushed to the desk. You must pay. They handed him a pouch of money. Here's yours. You must have worked hard. Go rest. He took it and replied, thank you, sir. After he left, the three of them stood around the crow discussing. Incredible. The wings. The skin is still intact. Is it really possible to bring a crow back in this condition? The receptionist's gaze shifted as if drawn to something. He still noticed Turan's presence there. Oh, you're not gone yet. Turan casually asked further, are there any other monsters worth hunting? The man suddenly broke into a sweat. What? He stood in the sunlight unhurt and relaxed. Could he really continue hunting? A feast of delicious dishes was arranged. This is the most expensive item on our menu. Lena sighed after setting a pile of tasty dishes on the table. I can't believe you hunted 30 monsters in 3 days. Turan found that ordinary, nothing special. Turan calmly enjoyed the meal, making a lot of money, huh? Turan opened his eyes and said seriously, it's not just about the money. While fighting those small monsters, he drained all their mana. The real target was the monster's mana. Because of that, he definitely became much stronger. Turan pondered, looking at his palm. His mana had increased several times since meeting Kjorn. His pupils didn't move as he stared, but he felt near his limit. Relying only on the mana of weak monsters would make it hard to grow stronger. Turan suddenly spoke up. Hey, Lena jumped in surprise and answered immediately, yes. He casually asked, didn't someone steal this and eat it? Lena, standing beside him, was sure. You ate it all by yourself. She tilted her head and complimented in surprise, you look skinny but you eat a lot. The inn's cook wiped his brow. It's been a long time since I prepared a meal like this, and I'm glad you ate it. Turan stood, nodded, and praised the food. It's really delicious, the cook happily promised. Next time I'll cook even better. Suddenly a hand shot out and grabbed his hat. Another arrogant fellow appeared from behind. eating all to yourself like that. Turan at first remained silent without looking back. You scrawny guy, have you been making money lately? Before the man's words finished, he took a straight punch to the face. Share some with your gang. He staggered and limped backward from the blow. Damn, one of his mates outside swore, that bastard. Turan tilted his head slightly. I only wanted to share a little. The arrogant man angrily swung wildly. Watch your mouth. Turan stood still and used his elbow to block the punch. As that man fell, another rushed from behind with a chair. With only his bare hands, he knocked the chair away. The man's eyes rolled up to see Turan's hand poised to flick his forehead. As he struck down, the man flipped onto his back. Lane outside ground her teeth. Don't. She angrily squeezed her nose and eyes shut and shouted, don't fight in my tavern. Midden appeared and bowed politely. My sincere apologies, truly sorry. Turan stood silent at his bow. I've already punished you both. Make sure this never happens again. He remained bowed and explained, we've been having a hard time lately, so it came to this. We're just jealous because you seem to be doing well. Then Midden signaled, apologize now. Both men bowed in fear and said sorry. Turan looked at him seriously and asked, are you having a hard time? Midden averted his gaze. Money's a bit tight. He began to explain while keeping one hand idle. We have about 3 days before we can't pay the rent, but that's our problem. Turan directly put a pouch of money in front of him. Take this. Midden looked up surprised. What's this? Turan calmly explained. This is a thank you for your kindness inviting me along before. Midden was actually the one surprised to hear that. How did you know? Turan cut in with a serious face. I'm not giving it away for free. Turan wanted something in return and produced it. Share some information with me. Midden smiled and tapped his chest confidently. Information I'm confident about. I'll tell you everything I know. The whole city then returned to its original calm. Turan stood alone on a high place. This is probably the last hunt in this city. He observed the surroundings and thought. Midden gave info on the next city. It's almost time to depart. In the two sat opposite each other talking for a long time. There was more useful information than expected, and no matter how many times he looked back, Midden was truly a good person. In his memory, Midden remained a radiant man. He wasn't as mature as Kjorn, but he was purer and kinder. But suddenly his gaze froze at something. His keen nose was sniffing out a strange scent. This smell is. Turan sprang quickly and suddenly deep into the forest. Hopping, his instinct was wrong. His pale hand pressed against a tree trunk. Turan stopped in a quiet part of the forest. Before him was a body murdered and collapsed under the tree. This person was certainly. The man trembling with blood on him was recognized by him. Wasn't he Midden's companion? The corner of his mouth curled into a smile when he saw the man. The man's eyes turned ashen. Beside the motionless hand lay a few small coins. Turan sat closer to him, curious. What on earth happened here, Midden? He could only fall silent when he glanced and saw another person slumped under a nearby tree. The one over there looked near death but kept murmuring rabbit. Two long front teeth appeared in the darkness. Rabbit. Turan looked and saw a rabbit monster gnawing at a corpse. It had white fur and its mouth was smeared with fresh blood. Turan watched it carefully and slowly stood up. Its red eyes leaped in and bit off a chunk of the tree trunk. Turan grit his teeth in surprise. So fast. The rabbit monster's ears pricked sharp. I almost got hit. Turan took out the sling in his hand and spun it continuously. Turan widened his eyes and focused with all his might. He lashed the sling in his hand in a sharp arc aimed at the rabbit monster. A few small stones flew at astonishing speed toward the rabbit in one spot. It was so agile it dodged them all. Turan saw its movements and regarded it seriously. This kid is well trained in defensive projectile techniques. One of its legs with 3 sharp claws was readying itself. It used its astonishing speed to lunge toward where he stood. Its pupils, red and fierce, focused on a single target. In the air, it vanished like a puff of smoke, leaving nothing there. The rabbit monster landed after missing its target. Turan seized the opportunity from behind with a small sharp knife ready. One stab straight under the neck made it scream in pain. Turan quickly retreated and stepped backward. His body backed toward a tree, but it seemed to be dissolving. The rabbit monster turned back and attacked the tree. Its expression was ferocious as it clawed repeatedly. Its eyes flared wildly and it sliced wherever it leapt. White smoke suddenly rose from the forest. The rabbit monster stood amid a field of broken trees and howled at the sky. Blood trickled from its body down to the ground. Its ears folded down and its tongue lolled out between its teeth. His black shoes reappeared on the ground. Turan returned to see the rabbit monster's body sprawled on the ground. As expected, he reached out his palm toward it. His face cold, he proceeded to drain all the mana from the rabbit monster's body. A blue glow shone in his eyes. The amount of mana he absorbed was markedly more than from the first beast. His gaze softened back to normal. Impossible. The person leaning against a tree whispered, "Are you a mage?" Turan didn't hide it and answered immediately, "Yes, that's right." The man remained curious. "Why did you reveal your identity?" Turan showed some concern and asked, "Of the 4 of you, does anyone have a family to leave belongings to?" From the gray eyes nearly closing, tears flowed. no one. And even Midden lay in a pool of blood with vacant eyes, oh friend. In Turan's memory, he still recalled Midden's smiling face. Recently, there's a great city called Orem. There's a place there called a library. Turan was quite surprised by one thing, a library, he confirmed. I've heard there are thousands of books there. Midden said as if he'd anticipated it. At the mention of books you get interested. You seriously want to know? Did I reveal it? Midden picked up the cup on the table, smiling softly, but he said that not everyone can enter that library. Taking the opportunity, Turan asked first, so how does one get in? Midden did not hesitate to tell him, apparently only mages are allowed in. Hearing that, Turan stroked his chin thoughtfully. I see. In the forest, his mind still turned to the conversation. I've decided. What have you decided? Now Turan stood before 3 makeshift graves. I will go to the great city Orem you mentioned. His face looked somewhat sad and his eyes glistened. Midden. After that, he could only leave with a final word. I hope you find happiness there. The scene arrived with Turan silently lining up in a long queue. His face was a bit ashamed when he first arrived in another city. I was surprised by the small town Murray. Now thinking back, it's embarrassing. This was a grand and bustling city, even more, the great city Orem. He followed the crowd step by step through the city gate into the great city. He hadn't expected so many people wanted to enter. His gaze noted a few soldiers guarding the gate. Were they filtering out wanted people? Turan slowly approached in turn. Indeed, a great city. The organization was far more structured. Suddenly a voice cut through his thoughts. Stop. Turan didn't understand and turned in surprise. Stop. He spoke up to ask what the matter was. The arrogant gate guard pointed at him. You may not enter. Turan touched his clothes as he heard it. I've never seen such filthy clothes. You should go dust yourself off over there before entering. Inside the city, a towering building had many kinds of trees growing around it. Small Turan stood at the foot looking up in astonishment. This is the library Midden spoke of. He couldn't stop marveling inwardly. Majestic indeed. It must have been built with magic. Turan cautiously approached the gate and intended to ask, excuse me, may I ask? The library guard answered solemnly, yes. He stepped closer and said, I want to enter here. Kenya stated the condition. This library is for mages only. Turan immediately asserted himself. I am a mage. The guard didn't believe it and stepped forward to probe. What? He frowned and berated him. You dare claim to be a mage? Do you want to die? There are all kinds of crazy people. Kenya even intentionally waved his hand as if to shoo Turan away. Someone like you being a mage is absurd. The hand that hadn't yet touched Turan suddenly flared red. Hjorn from his memories appeared again. Mages can recognize each other. They can sense another's mana and tell if that person is stronger than themselves. His gaze suddenly sharpened. Just by sensing from that man's palm, his gaze flared red. The man was affected and struggled to close one eye. He was forced back by the pressure and fell backward. Are you okay? I'm fine. Kenya's head was still touching the ground, his eyes wide in shock. This is no ordinary mage. This person is at least noble rank or higher. Then he stood up, yawned. I am Kenya, knight of the Voltas family. May I ask which family you come from? Turan remained calm because he did not want to answer yet. Must one reveal it to enter? He replied respectfully, no sir. Kenya lowered his head, his eyes darkening, but to use the library one needs permission from the master of Voltas. Turan still did not understand. You mean? Kenya will handle it immediately. I will contact the Voltas family at once. Meanwhile, Turan was to wash himself. Very well. One of his eyes opened in boredom. I thought it would be simpler. A maid with blonde hair also appeared there. His long arm was being carefully wiped. Turan sat in the bath while the maids washed him. How did it come to this? He suddenly turned and ordered them. Stop. Everyone flinched. Yes, sir. Turan wanted privacy, so he asked them to leave. Is there a problem if I bathe alone? The maids answered timidly. If we don't serve properly, we will be punished. In this vast manner, he could only accept it. Suit yourselves. They obeyed and thanked him. A maid with cold brown hair was exclaiming something wonderful. A voice rang out, making her start and cover her mouth. What's wrong? Turan was carefully fixing the back of his hair after putting on the new suit. Is there something on my face? The cold brown-haired maid explained. You were probably overwhelmed by his beauty. The other maids bowed and asked forgiveness. Turan seemed gentle and kind. There's nothing to apologize for. They chimed in immediately. Please don't be modest with us. His gaze suddenly turned toward a direction where a sound came from. What is that? From another direction, a person with pink hair entered the room. Azello appeared with sharp eyes and a sultry face. Is this the guest who arrived in that beggar guise? She sneered mockingly. After bathing and changing, you look no different from a prince. Turan paid slight attention to her words. Hey, about that beggar word. While Azella was still smiling, he introduced himself. I am Tyran. Likewise, she replied, I am Azella. She wanted to know his background. Which family is he from? Tyran carefully declined. I have reasons I cannot reveal. Azella rubbed her chin lightly. Is that so? What a pity. A mysterious smile spread across her face. He wants to hide his identity. Then let's prod him a little. Saying and doing, she released a surge of mana around her body. Her face looked excited as she turned toward Tyran. Show me. He was still lost in thought when startled by the mana. What is your mana like?